Welcome to The Real Story with Jeannie Ives. In the studio with me today is Ted Dabrowski. He's the president of WirePoint's organization. We are going to do a two-part discussion with Ted, and the first part is going to be about Amendment 1. It is the first question on your ballot for Illinoisans. It has extreme consequences on whether or not it's passed one way or the other. I mean, this is very consequential to the state, and I'm such a privilege to have Ted on my program as he just came from interviewing with Mike Flannery on Fox 32 in Chicago. So, Ted, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me here. And it was pretty exciting just having somebody like Mike Flannery finally cover it. Amendment 1 is not getting the coverage it deserves. Most people don't know about it still. And I argue it's the most consequential vote on the ballot, even though, voting for governor is huge, right? And voting for your favorite state rep or whatever. But when we talk about Amendment 1, we're talking about amending the Constitution. And in more specific terms, we're talking about, enshrining the strongest powers of government unions directly into the Constitution. And boy, does that have a big impact on Illinoisans.
Well, it certainly will. I mean, right now, we already have some of the strongest union protections just in our state laws. They now want to enshrine in our Constitution protections for government union workers and to actually say that, guess what? We will never be a right-to-work state. Now, I think that's a bit of an overreach, and it feels like, and I will say this, I know the Chicago Tribune and the Daily Herald, both of them very liberal media organizations, have already editorialized saying we should not put this as part of our Constitution.
Yeah, I think if you spend the time to understand what it is, then you realize, my gosh, these kind of things don't belong in the Constitution. It doesn't matter what your point of view is. And so I think these newspapers have got it right. But if you only listen to the marketing side, if you look at the commercials that the pro side, the supporters of the amendment put out, workers' rights, who can be against workers' rights?
Right.
Everybody's for workers, but
right.
That's not the true story, and that's not the whole story. It's certainly not the real story.
And that's what we're about. We are about the real story because that's exactly why we started Breakthrough Ideas. It was to actually, elevate the conversation about what is actually going on behind the scenes when it comes to particular policy choices. Because we feel like a more informed voter is going to make a better choice overall for the state and for actually their own prosperity. Now, You fielded some questions from Mike Flannery. I'm interested. You were opposite somebody who is a proponent of Amendment 1.
From the
How did that conversation go?
Well, the thing is that it's the obvious pitching points that this is for every worker in Illinois. Every worker will have more rights, more powers, and that helps workers because everybody will make more money, get more benefits, get more health care, and that's good, right? So who would be against that? And so that's the starting point, which we then have to work backwards and dispel because, one, it's not true. Two, there's much more to it than that.
Well, it definitely is. And I mean, part of the warning that if viewers want to find out more, they can go to a website called Vote Against Amendment 1. That's the number 1.com, voteagainstamendment1.com. And in here, there's a lot of information about what the amendment does and does not do. So, and also you may see this little flyer being hung on your door as well. But I mean, in this one, it says, voters beware, a vote for Amendment 1 will, 1, make Illinois the nation's extreme outlier when it comes to giving government unions power over taxpayers. Illinois would go further than any other state in the country by cementing public union powers and rights directly into the Illinois Constitution. Now, one of the things that I think is most problematic is the public sector included in this amendment question that unions can be protected against their own economic welfare and safety. What does that mean? How far could that mean that they could go?
Well, so this thing creates a new right that allows them to protect or organize and bargain for things that protect their economic welfare, in quotes, I put that, and safety. And again, I'm talking about the public sector. And we'll come back to the private sector in a minute. Well, we don't know what it means, Jeannie, because we've never said, and no other union has this in their constitution. No other state has this in their constitution.
Right.
So we're protecting their economic welfare. Well, think about that. Forcing masks in a classroom might be something a teachers union negotiates because that's something they're concerned about their safety. They may want to do affordable housing projects because they're worried about their economic welfare. It opens up the negotiation for these unions.
And this is not just hyperbole.
No.
Talk. This is not hyperbolic on your
It's
part
already,
at all.
It's already happened.
It's already happened before, where they have tried to negotiate housing allowances or affordable housing for teachers that are forced to live within the city of Chicago, for example.
Exactly. That's something that was
right.
just they
so
were
this could
negotiating.
be, if this were part of the Constitution, they could argue that this is a bargaining item for which they must be compensated for.
Correct. And not just that, it's already happened with regards to safety. We saw what the Chicago Teachers Union did when they closed down schools because they wanted masking, they want vaccines, they want mandates. And if they can get that in the collective bargaining agreements in the future if this thing were to pass, then that becomes the law of the land. There are no laws that the legislature could pass to stop that because these are their powers given to them by their Constitution.
So not only is it an overreach on the union's part, it basically nullifies the effectiveness or the legal authority that legislators currently have in determining particular laws, whether it's workers' compensation or other laws dealing with kids.
Yeah, and that's not hyperbole either, because if you look at the actual amendment language, it says no laws, so that's the legislature, no law shall be passed that diminish those rights and those powers. And so once they agree to something that they bargained with, that's their economic welfare, their safety, or their pocketbook, then it's really going to be impossible for the legislature and therefore people to undo that. And so that's why we've talked about this. You know, the other side says this is not about property taxes. Well, it's all about property taxes, because if they negotiate something more, well, the public has to pay for it.
So Illinois policy has done a great job in terms of bringing up some of these things. And they say 5 ways Illinoisans can expect to pay higher taxes if this amendment is passed. And then they say it would broadly expand the subjects government worker unions can bargain over, like we've discussed. It has new subjects of bargaining, like you just talked. It would grant government unions a permanent right to strike if their demands were not met. Let's go into that a little bit further, because Wire Points also came out with some discussion points about how actually you think public safety workers who currently can't strike because they're forced into mediation actually would be given the ability to strike if this were passed.
Yeah, so let's start with the teachers first. So, it's been, a few decades ago, they were given the rights legally in the state law to strike. And that's why we've seen the Chicago Teachers Union walk out or strike 5 times in the last 10 years. That's their powers today. This is before Amendment 1. But for police and fire, it's against the law. So they can only demand arbitration. But now imagine Amendment 1 if it passes. Now you've got maybe a disgruntled police group, or and you can see how they could be unhappy in today's world. They're getting beat up,
absolutely,
or fired. They're negotiating, and they say, "We want the right to strike. We want that. We'll give something up in exchange." And next thing you know, you could have some police union, some fire union somewhere, or several, negotiating the right to strike. Now think about that for Illinoisans, right? Not only do we allow our teachers to strike, but now we'd have the people who keep us safe with the power to strike. And that's the danger of this amendment. It could make things far worse for Illinoisans. We don't know if it happened, but it could happen.
Let's get to a little bit to the politics here of this. Let's be honest. The teacher unions, the AFL-CIO, the private unions for that matter, okay? Everybody, they already own the legislators. They already own it. They give enormous sums of money to these campaigns to get people elected who put in favorable laws to help them out. So this is why we have the 4th highest work comp rates in the country. This is why we don't have right to work legislation in this state, which is, by the way, one of the most beneficial things we could do to unleash the power of our economy here in the state of Illinois. We don't have that already. This is why we have high tax rates, high property taxes, everything, because the unions control the legislators, and that's, Jeanne,
I've been saying it for years.
We have both been saying it for years. Yeah. So people need to understand this. This is, while this doesn't benefit private unions, from what I can tell, private unions are still supporting this measure.
Well, I think many of them are buying that message that's on the commercials.
Yep.
That, let's talk about that part because it's an important part for people
Yes,
to understand.
let's talk about that.
These commercials are saying workers, private sector workers, will get more rights, more safety, and it sounds like, wow, who doesn't want more workers' rights? The fact of the matter is that those commercials are not true. Maybe I should use the word, they're a lie, because federal law trumps whatever happens in the state when it comes to private sector workers' rights to bargain and safety. Federal law trumps that. So no matter what the state does, it doesn't affect them. So this amendment does not help worker rights for the private sector. And they're trying to get lots of votes by saying that, but it's just not true. And Senator Villavalum himself, when he's the sponsor of the amendment, when he was negotiating this thing, he made it very clear in session that this will not cover the private sector. So those ads are just not true.
They're lies.
Yeah.
So he said that I did not know that he said that actually in the floor debate about the...
Jeannie, we just did an Instagram reel where we have the video and the audio of Villavalum, again, the sponsor of the amendment, saying precisely that this amendment does not cover the private sector. And if people knew that, then they'd realize it's all about the public sector. It's all about the public sector. And let me be clear, the only thing that is for the private sector is blocking right to work. But when we talk about rights to organize and all that and safety, that's all covered by the federal government.
Well, there's already there's 27 states that have right to work laws, and actually there was a really good Crain's article, and I've talked about this before on my podcast. I think it's important to say it again. But one of the sectors that Governor Pritzker and the Democrats would like to have a growing economy on is battery manufacturing, because they're trying to attract all sorts of electric vehicle manufacturing, and they would like the battery manufacturing to come here as well. We have lost out on 18 battery manufacturers coming to the state of Illinois, and almost all of them relocated their operation or set up their operation in a right-to-work state. They just simply bypassed the state of Illinois for even considering a battery manufacturer, even though we're really into that sector. We really like that sector. We think it's sexy. We think it's the way of the future. No. Bottom line is, they're not coming here. They're going to a right-to-work state.
Well, when you add it all up, Jeannie, all the other stuff, pension debts, taxes and all that, add to that we're not a right-to-work state, and it really hurts us, especially with Indiana as a right-to-work state. Wisconsin's a right-to-work. Michigan is right-to-work. Kentucky is right-to-work. Iowa's right-to-work. They're all right-to-work except for Missouri, and they tried. So we're so uncompetitive across the board, and here's one more thing. And if this amendment passes, it will making us right-to-work illegal in the Constitution. And it'd be difficult to change that.
Well, and if they go this way, there's going to be a lot more companies that are going to be pressured into union workforce. That's exactly what's going to happen. And Mark Walker, who's running up for state rep, he had this data center bill that would have unionized the data centers. And that ended up getting struck down because even they understood that would be a deal killer for data centers coming to the state of Illinois, which a lot of them have been coming to here for our previously low electricity rates relative to the rest of the states. Now that's a problem. But unionization of those data centers would have been a problem as well. Yeah. So, I mean, it's bad all around.
It's bad all around.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I think about, and maybe this is the easiest way to make this concrete, is that look at what the Chicago Teachers Union has done to kids on grades. Just the failure of that school district. Look at what they've done in terms of closing down schools. Look at their power vis-a-vis parents. Can you imagine saying that those unions will get even more power under Amendment 1? Why would anybody want to give them more power? If anything, they need to be depowered. Right? They need to be. This amendment would give them even more powers, and it just makes no sense. So that's, I think, the best way to think about this amendment. They are the
poster child for out of control unions. CTU. They are the poster child. They literally sent some of their membership down to Venezuela,
right,
to learn more about Marxism.
So that's what I think. And they opened the door for everybody else to be more militant, or not militant, maybe. But
I think militant.
But it opens the door for all the other unions in Illinois to go a little further than they would have gone because CTU is so militant. And so that's my point. If you want to see more union power in Illinois, then then vote for Amendment 1. But if you think that, like CTU and others have gone way too far, and we've seen parents' rights be destroyed the last 2.5 years. Parents had no rights, and I saw that in my own school district. People saw it everywhere. So anyway, this would destroy parents' rights. This amendment.
So just to kind of tidy up this conversation, because I think it's important for people. First of all, this question on Amendment 1, and we basically put it out there: reject more taxes, vote no on Amendment 1. This is the first question on your ballot. So for us in DuPage County on the sample ballot, it's written a long ways down. You have to go way to the bottom on the first column to make a determination if you're going to vote yes or no. It'd be very easy to skip over that column and go straight to where you see candidates listed, just thinking, oh, that's just something legal that had to be put on the ballot, or something official that doesn't really, there's not really a question there. But no, that first column, at least in DuPage County, is this ballot question on Amendment 1. So sample ballot down, the left-hand side, go to the bottom, vote no before you start with the candidates. I think it's going to be easy for people to miss.
Yeah, some people, like you said, might think it's legalese, or my gosh, I don't understand it, because it uses different language than, right? It's not called Amendment 1. It's not called workers' rights, right? It says it's technical, and so people may skip it. So they need to be aware. I encourage people at wirepoints.org. We have a button that says Amendment 1. It's a red button right on our site. And we kind of break out what this amendment is, so people who don't know what it is, or who want to go slowly, if we've gone too fast or it's too complex, it is very complex. So,
it is.
So go there, and then Jeannie, I know you have your own site there as well for people to educate themselves.
Well, I'm sorry. I should have actually told people, go to wirepoints.org, and right up at the top, and you can maybe share my screen here if you want to, JP, on this one. You'll see the Amendment 1 button. Take action, and the impact on Illinoisans. You lay it out very clearly. By the way, do you have a countdown?
A countdown because
here.
It's coming.
Yes, 11 days, 11 hours, 37 minutes. Okay, and they basically take it section by section on the Workers' Right Amendment and exactly explain which each section would mean for people. So excellent tool for you all to share. wirepoints.org. I'll make sure that we actually are going to, we're going to screenshot that and get it out to more people, because it's a really good website that you put together there. Okay, one other thing, and we were noodling on this prior to going on our podcast live, but let's just talk a little bit about the requirements to pass it if we can get our math straight in our head, because it passes if 60% of the folks who vote on that question say yes to Amendment 1, or if 50% plus one voter who voted in the entire election vote to pass Amendment 1. I'm just trying to get my head around that. Let's say we have 1 million voters who vote in the whole election. How does this work math-wise? Did we figure that out, Ted?
Yeah, well, it's if half of the people, out of all the people who voted, slightly more than half vote on it, then it passes. That's one way it passes. The other way it passes is if 60% of those who vote on the question say yes, then it passes. So there's two ways it can pass, and so that, of course, makes it easier, because there's two ways for it to pass, which means that people need to be vigilant about looking at the amendment, as you mentioned, and making sure they understand before they go in, and not trying to figure it out on the day because it's too messy. So, for example, let's say that 1 million voters walk in, and only 100,000 decide to even look at the question and vote on it. Right.
Then with only 60,000 votes, that could become a permanent part of our Constitution. That's right. If very few people vote on it, but enough who know about it, which are going to be the pro-union. The pro-union people. Right, the part of the government, the government people, the government sector, they could pass it on a low voting turnout. Right. On the issue, it passes. So we encourage you, don't skip the question, vote no on it. Because the other side has spent already millions of dollars elevating the conversation among their people, among the pro-union people, to vote yes on it. So we need people to show up and vote no on this.
Yeah, and there's been many people who've only seen the ads. There's been much more money spent on the support
Yes.
side than on the opposed side. And so those ads are, as we talked about, they're tricky.
Very tricky. Well, okay. So I tell you what, I think it's the passage of this amendment would be the most detrimental bill to the future growth of the state of Illinois economically.
Well, just two points I want to make as final
Okay.
points. One is it would cement two classes of people in Illinois. One class, which would be the public sector, protected by this Amendment 1, protected by pensions, right? This pension protection clause. They have long-term contracts, guaranteed raises, all these guaranteed benefits. So that would be the first class who's locked in there. And the second class, which are the private sector citizens who don't get any of those benefits, they have to pay for the first class. So this is the problem. We have two classes, one that's funding the other, and the benefits and protections are rich for the first class, and the second class just has to suck it up. It doesn't matter what it costs, pay up, which is why many people are leaving, right?
That's right.
Because they don't want to be in a place where they're locked into the second class. So
That's right. I mean, sorry, but I think businesses have been asleep at the switch in fighting this. They never came together as an organization and a coalition to fight it. There's been a small cabal of people that in the last couple months now have tried to fight it and put together information, signs, flyers, things like that. But you know what? Business did not come together. Now, they came together and are strongly opposed to this when the amendment was going through the legislature to put the ballot question on the ballot. But since then, they have not created a coalition to really fight against this and get the message out.
there really isn't. It's really been more of a grassroots in groups like you, going out
And
there.
wire points, really, yeah.
And we've been educating. It's we can't take a stance on it. It's obvious. It's obvious that we think there's a lot of harm from it, but we can't come out in public and say vote no, vote yes, because
Well, we can, so vote no on it.
There you go.
All right. Okay, great. That concludes the first part of my conversation with Ted. Second part coming up, even more interesting. Well, I don't know, maybe the same interest. But how are our kids doing academically? The new scores are out. Let's find out.